So top your own wave here. Today got this one right here. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a scam and EA is gaslighting victims. Let's react to it.
I'm being torn apart.
Hmm?
I want to be free of this pain.
No, you can't.
I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it.
I will know what is coming.
Will you help me?
I will know.
Yes, anything.
Oh my god. Performance issues as always. Nothing new.
Thank you.
Did you think that PC versions of games couldn't get worse after Arkham Knight and The Last of Us on PC? Well,
my God,
boy,
no.
do I have news for you. Because unlike how Dead Island 2 launched with a damn near perfect PC port, even though it was stuck in development hell for a literal decade whilst moving between 3 different studios,
At least it worked more.
Star Wars Jedi Survivor has hands down one of the worst PC ports of any game I have ever played. But hey, at least EA can brag about how fast they churned this game out after laying off most of their QA testers. This PC port isn't just on par with Arkham Knight's infamous launch, I'd argue it's possible to claim it's worse. If I were to attempt to list all of the issues with this version of the game, it would take an eternity. There is genuinely not a single aspect of this game on PC that functions as it should.
Could it be because of UE5? Like, I don't know if it's on Unreal Engine 5 or 4, but that could make a huge difference. Because the newer ones are... I think they need time to be better, you know?
On an RTX 4090, you're looking at a solid 23 frames per second on the opening world.
You know, I was just like having fun, laughing around, but I'm done at this point, dude.
Damn.
22 frames, bro. Fuck Respawn, fuck EA. How they could sell this for $80 is insane.
In a best case scenario, you're
works,
getting
though.
90 FPS on a motherfucking 4090, but most of the time you're looking at barely 60 FPS. Now what about a realistic high-end PC build? I myself have an RTX 3070, Ryzen 9 5900X, 32GB of DDR4 memory, and a Samsung 980 Pro as my SSD. So at the bare minimum, I should be seeing between 60 and 80 FPS at 1440p at any point in the game. That isn't a matter of opinion, that is a statement of fact. Do you want to know what I'm getting in terms of FPS in the open world area of Jedi Survivor
Let me guess. 19 or something.
during a boss fight? A baffling 15 FPS at times.
That's kind of small.
And then...
Yikes.
No, I'm not joking. With FSR set to balance and a mix of...
Bro, how can they fuck this up? Like, the predecessor was like nearly a masterpiece. At least an 8 out of 10, but this one?
high and medium settings. This pile of shit port was locking me to 15 FPS with some of the worst frame times I have ever seen in my entire life. Now in fairness, you won't experience this awful level of performance all the time because this is the most broken port I have ever experienced. It is on par with Saints Row 2 and goddamn GTA 4 on PC.
Okay, but that was back in the day. Now you don't have any excuses, man.
Son, I was experiencing between 23 to around 55 FPS, with again, insanely high frame times and basically no usage of my GPU. And I was so very hopeful when I left that shit heap to go to the second planet because I landed on that bad boy and I finally saw the game actually utilizing my GPU. Not properly, might I add, but it was finally being used. And when the game said sight, taking my FPS down from 60 to a staggering 23 FPS.
You had it all. You had hope. For one moment at least.
To attempt to list off the issues with this port I've seen, there are huge fucking memory leaks. If you play the game for extended periods of time, you will gradually see performance decrease. The worst CPU utilization ever seen in gaming. Any GPU being bottlenecked by any CPU for no reason because of the absurd CPU utilization, and far too much lump loading, where developers dump huge amounts of data into VRAM at once.
All of that just for 70 bucks, I guess.
Rather than gradually feeding it in, which would avoid sharp and significant stutters. And last but certainly not least, tons of frame time stuttering. Again, caused by that CPU utilization. Not to mention the random crashes.
No.
You don't want to be like this.
Nah.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way. If I could kill it, I would. But I legally can't. But I've considered it.
When I say there isn't a single aspect of this port which isn't broken, I mean it. FSR 2, for example, barely affects performance, merely adding on at most an extra 2 FPS in my experience. Changing your settings from epic to low won't affect shit, because of the comically bad CPU utilization that means in most cases, the game is unable
it's just programming failure. That's all.
to actually use most of your GPU's capabilities, and even the goddamn menus are barely functional unless you plug a controller in. Something I think we can all agree on is absurd considering the fact this is the PC version of the game. Despite the cursor on the screen and me being able to click each toggle, I cannot click on the arrows in order to edit said toggle. There's also no image or even a bloody description to showcase the changes to the visuals of Jedi Survivor per setting. Something that wouldn't bother me too much even though there is clearly room for such basic things if there were a VRAM counter. This is a game that requires 8GB of VRAM at minimum, and has been proven to use up to nearly 20GB of VRAM if it is able to, despite clearly not needing it. And yet it has no built-in metric to allow you to measure whether or not your system
It's obvious. It's a typical case of getting something online on startup on the date when it must be released. That's a big problem, and that's why people get burnt out. The thing is that the programmers, they try their best that the game can be at least playable. That's the thing. But maybe, let's say development takes like 3 years. 2 of them, they just sit there and do some storyboard shit and are just getting meeting ups and shit like that. But after that, they get to work and they don't have time. They don't have enough time to do shit because all these years before, they just don't care about it. Like, it's insanity.
Capable of running whatever settings you are attempting to run, meaning you possibly have to spend hours like I did trying.
So I would never blame the people who worked on this game, just the people who are like above them, you know?
To find a setting that doesn't run like ass. Unfortunately, that's just not possible anyway, thanks to again the CPU utilization. And as Alex from Digital Foundry stated, everyone is getting stutters in Jedi Survivor. No one can claim the game is smooth. If someone is claiming the game is smooth, ask them to post an entire playthrough of Coruscant or the town of Kobar with a frame time graph active. It will show stutters even in 3D cache horizons. Every time a game releases with awful frame time issues, there are always those that want to make it into, oh, your hardware is the problem thing. It's fine on my PC, when that is literally impossible. People saying such things just do not notice or ignore the stutters. There is flat out no way to get this PC port to run in a stable manner because of the nature of the optimization, or more specifically, complete lack of optimization. The reason I believe this game runs the way it does regardless of settings and regardless of hardware is because I suspect the game is not coming close to utilizing CPU multi-cores effectively and or properly. This means that it essentially relies on single threads, hence your hardware not mattering, and hence why even in 3D cache horizons, you're seeing immense frame time stutter.
This is why you just wait for a few months before you are buying a game. Never pre-purchase. Never. Unless you're a true hardcore dedicated fan and you know that this is going to be something good. Then, but only in a few cases, it might be worth it. But most of the time, it's utter garbage.
Is also likely the reason for the shoddy performance in consoles as well. If you are on console and thinking about buying this game, unless you want to be stuck in 2010 frame rates aka 30 FPS, you're going to have a fairly negative experience with this title, as performance mode is having severe screen tearing issues, frame rates between 40 to 50 FPS, and almost laughably bad HDR support. But how exactly did EA respond to people rightfully calling out that bullshit in the Steam reviews and on YouTube? Well, they took a page out of the AAA handbook, exactly like Naughty Dog did with the Last of Us PC port. Specifically the page about the AAA scam cycle. Start charging $70 for your games, knowingly rush the developers into releasing a title in a near unplayable experience, scam tens of thousands of customers, and then make sure to attempt to gaslight the customer into believing—
The thing is, this works, except for gaslighting, but the game will be like pretty infamous for a few days or weeks at least, but then it's gonna die out, and after like a few months where I gotta make it decent at least. Decent. Some games get pretty good, but most of the time they just don't care about it. Or try to make it at least somewhat playable.
And it's their fault and ultimately
know about
barely
this one,
fixed
though.
the game across a plethora of patches in the coming weeks. EA intentionally released what can only be described as a flat-out scam, knowingly, and then made this statement. A note from the Jedi team on the PC version of Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
What
We
now?
are aware that Star Wars Jedi Survivor isn't performing to our standards for a percentage of our PC players, in particular those with high-end machines or certain specific configurations. For example, players using cutting-edge multi-threaded chipsets designed for Windows 11 were encountering problems on Windows 10, or high-end GPUs coupled with lower performing CPUs also saw unexpected frame loss. Rest assured, we are working to address these cases quickly.
What?
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them!
It's literally them.
Balance to the Force,
Literally.
not leave it in darkness!
I always love it when AAA publishers charge $70, knowingly scam their customers, and then pretend as if they never knew these issues were going to happen, whilst attempting to gaslight the consumer. The fact alone that EA is pretending as if they weren't aware of these issues before launch, and just happened to stumble upon them after launch, is completely laughable, since this is the only game in existence to have implemented full-blown menu systems in order to tell the player that their game is completely broken. I have never
What?
seen this in another game, and I have never heard of this being in another game.
This is the first
but
one, I
what
guess.
do expect is to see it more often, since this game has managed to top the Steam charts still, despite the abhorrent release of this version. There are so
Well, last time I checked, like the reviews right now are like mixed, but last time I checked it was like mostly negative. It was insane at the beginning.
Steam charts still, despite the abhorrent release of this version. There are so many things wrong with that statement, but most importantly, what the fuck do they mean by multi-threaded chipsets designed for Windows 11, encountering problems on Windows 10? Not only is the performance
Yeah, they try to make it like it just doesn't work for like those small percentage amount of people. Like the small percentage. But that's where the problem is. But it's something everyone encounters who has at least somewhat to a mid or end game price range, I guess. But this is just a clear lie, and you all know it.
difference between Windows 11 and Windows 10 not even considerable in any scenario, since there's practically no difference between those OSs, and at most you'll have a 1 to 5 FPS difference between the two that could go either way. But there's just also that classic AAA response of a percentage of our PC players or some of our PC players are
Just
encountering these issues, when in reality, the only people who aren't quote-unquote experiencing these issues are just the ones who haven't noticed them. It doesn't mean they aren't experiencing them. It just means they aren't knowledgeable enough to know they're being scammed. The fact they are blaming consumers for having the quote-unquote wrong configurations is laughable. This title has proven time and time again does not run well no matter what. It is barely possible to get it to run above 60 FPS even on a 4090. GPUs being paired with supposed lower performing CPUs is not the issue. My testing in and of itself proves that, since my CPU is overkill for a 3070. The rest of the statements don't get any better either, since they further attempt to blame the fact there's no single comprehensive solution for PC performance, which is simply not true. Game engines handle a lot of this stuff on the back end, and drivers exist for a fucking reason, as you so brilliantly pointed out when you copied Naughty Dog's gaslighting attempts. If you see any developer and or publisher claiming that the lack of comprehensive PC builds is the issue, that almost always only translates to nothing more than, fuck you, we don't care about optimizing our games because we know you'll buy this shit anyway. Is it harder to optimize for PC than consoles?
Bro, this is like MMORPG Kickstarter level of gaslighting. It's insane.
Absolutely yes. But is it as hard as these AAA scammers like Naughty Dog and EA are attempting to claim? The answer is a resounding no. If a game like Dead Island 2 can release with a damn near perfect PC port after a literal decade of development hell after moving between 3 different studios, then there is zero excuse for anyone to be releasing broken garbage like this. All in all, this is not an acceptable port in any capacity, and this is clearly not a company you should should be supporting. Despite the fact the game, underneath all the performance issues on consoles and PC, is fantastic. I didn't think I really needed to say that you shouldn't support EA, but for some reason people have managed to convince themselves EA has changed a lot, when they clearly haven't. So with all that being said, we have finally come to the end of this video, and so I will now beg you to do all the things YouTubers love to make.
Yep. And I will always ask us the same thing. I would really appreciate your support with a like and sub and comment as well. And I guess that's it. I guess see you next time. Wafer.